Hi, I'm Brent Barnett with Gibraltar Hardware. I am the Artist Relations Specialist. Today we're going to talk about the new Gibraltar NAMM rack for 2012. When I'm trying to figure out which direction I want to go when I'm building a rack, I first look at all the drums that I have and how I want them positioned on the rack. And for this rack I'm using 8-inch, 10-inch, 12-inch, 13-inch rack toms, and then a 15 and then an 18-inch floor tom with two 20 by 22-inch bass drums. So I didn't want to set them up like a traditional 8, 10, 12, 13 row right across the front of the bass drums. I wanted to be a little bit different. I wanted to have the 8 as an accent on the left side, the 12 and the 13 down in the middle, like right in the heart just above the snare, and then the 10-inch on the upper right like another accent drum. I just figured, well, I have no idea how I want to go about getting this up, but let's start trying some ideas out. I must have tried, 3 or 4 different ideas, and I didn't like what I did, and I ripped it all down and started over again. Gibraltar is not just parts and pieces of chrome and ways to make your setup different. It's a tool to offer you the ability for self-expression so you can create your own art. So I had the front established on how I wanted to do it. How do I connect these together? Because they're not going to be stable if they're just sitting there by themselves, standing up. So I was like, well, I've got a really nice open space right over the 2 bass drums and the toms. There's no bar there. There's nothing there. All you see is drums. So I just thought, what if I were to take the bars, instead of placing them over the bass drum, why don't I place them closer to the bottom of the bass drum? I can mount bass drum mics off of each one. So, a sound engineer wouldn't have to put it on a tripod, a stand on the floor and boom it in. You could just have it automatically just set up to your rack and you just boom it directly into the actual bass drum head. Well, traditionally when you see drums mounted to a rack, they're mounted on the horizontal bar right across over the bass drum. I created a tube for each rack tom that I had mounted. So I mounted the 12 and the 13 right between the 2 bass drums. I had a bar supporting each one. The actual tom arm is mounted inside of the bar. So then I needed another way to mount the 8-inch and the 10-inch. So rather than putting, just straight across 8, 10, 12, 13 like a traditional setup, I decided to do 12, 13 dead center in the middle, and then do the 8 up on the left and then the 10-inch up on the right. So I just created the entire same assembly that's going to hold the 8-inch and the 10-inch on both sides as I did the front assembly, which is holding the 12 and 13-inch. I mounted them, I offset them a little bit and mounted them a little higher than the 12 and 13, so it gave it kind of a V look. If you look from behind the drums, if you look from the 8 and the 10, it V's right down towards the snare. So I was like, well, why don't I just make all 4 corners uniform? So I just created the same exact assemblies as I did for each corner for the back and connected them. And I decided to get a little crazy. I was like, let's go a second tier. So I found some excess bar that was hanging off towards the front coming forward. I was like, well, what if I were to take a curved bar and go back the opposite direction, aim it towards the back? That opened up a whole nother realm for me, and being able to create what looks like to me like I call railroad tracks. It looks like we've got 2 railroad tracks that are going back, and I did the exact same thing on the back side where I had the tubes come back forward, then I just connected them at the top. It gives you 2 rails on each side of your kit to mount stuff to. You can mount a lot of cymbals there. Another really cool thing is that you can mount overhead mics right to that top rail. There's no more tripods or anything on the ground, and you don't have to have a boom arm long enough to hopefully reach up there. You just have to have a short boom arm and you just clamp it right to the top of the rack. I've got all 3 components, the left, the right, and the middle, all connected together with the 2 crossbars in the front, and it's not obstructing the bass drum head, and it keeps that whole area from the middle lower part of the bass drum to the top of the toms completely open, so you cannot see anything but drums.